Hey guys, and welcome to Pheas Airsoft, where today I'm going to do a disassembly for repair and maintenance on this CYMA Platinum SLR AK-105. Hey guys, and welcome back. If you do enjoy this content today, please do consider liking, commenting, subscribing, because those interactions help me get seen by the YouTube algorithms. That helps the channel to grow. If you want to support the channel a little bit more, the Linktree link down below will take you to all my socials, including my Discord. Do stop by and say hello. If you want to support the channel a little bit more, the join button is down below. Will take you to channel memberships, 99p a month, totally optional, really appreciated, or whatever your currency is. Custom videos, giveaways, a little bit more of a say, early previews, that kind of stuff, and your own chat section in the Discord. So hopefully you've seen the unboxing of this AK-105, which I absolutely adored, and it is linked down below in the description. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to have a go at doing a disassembly of it to help you with repair and or maintenance. So, got the mag out, get that out of the way. Let's get the dust cover off. So we're just going to push the button in at the back, that comes up and off. The muzzle is on a little tiny grub screw, which we're just going to, I bet it's T6. So that is it's not a T6. Well, it is, but it's jumping. Is that even a T6? It is, but it's not liking that. I don't know if that's going to be able to get in there. There we go. So, that is a negative thread then, under there. So loosen that off. You have got a 14mm negative thread then under there for you to, I'll leave that off for now, put that on a little bit later on. Next thing, I'm going to take these two hex head or Allen key head bolts out, and these two here to get this front assembly off, as well as needing to lift that up, but we'll sort that in a moment. So these two, yeah, so for this one, I could use an Allen key or an X head. I'm going to use Torx because they tend to grab better and tend to not round. So I'm using a Torx 15 in these top ones. Listening for that clicker, there we go. And that one as well. Now, the lower hand guard is literally dropping off in my, whoopsie-daisy, in my hands. So I'm just going to lift those out. But it's literally coming apart. So I'm going to lift that up and out. That didn't even need retaining with that. And the handguard has literally just dropped away. So I didn't even need to take the bottom screws out. They just hold this inner retaining unit in. So I'm guessing they're not 15s. No, they're bigger bolts. They are still too small. What's that? Torx 25. Torx 25 will do those if you need to remove this inner bracket there. So get those out of the way. That was surprisingly easy so far. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this front sight block then. So there are two pins, one here where I can see the teeth on this side, and I think this pin here, the teeth are on this side. Now it looks like that should be the only thing. So I'm just going to take this off camera and I'm just going to punch this through. Now, yes, I could and should and ought to use punchers. Unfortunately, don't always have those things, and I'm not actually at home at the minute, so I don't actually have everything to me. But using stuff like this, you can use alternatives to do this sort of work. So I'm just going to go off camera and tap this out. So there are, hopefully that's focused, the teeth on the pin. So that came out of this left hand side. That's already come loose and that's dropped down there. I've now got in here a set screw grub screw in there, and this pin that's going to come out this way. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to take the pin out first and then loosen the grub screw. So I was right, the teeth were at this right hand side by the charging handle. Now this still won't go anywhere because that set screw is still in there. Now, because this all looks to like it's bolted together. I need to be quite delicate here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch tack at this point. I'm going to leave this like this. I'm going to pop this cover off here. There is a little cover off there. I'm just going to pop up. So I've just popped that cover off. There's just two little clip teeth there that go. You can see there's two little gaps for it. I'm going to bring in a Phillips head and undo this Phillips head screw here. So far, everything is well screwed down. It's absolutely rock solid. Drop that out of the way. I'm then going to flip it. And I'm going to do, it's a hex head on the bottom. How unusual. So I'm going to use the Torx 15 screw on the bottom there of the pistol grip. I'm going to lift that up and off. So there is our Torx head or Allen key or hex head bolt now at the bottom of our pistol grip. Get that out of the way. I've taken the selector off. Now the inside of the selector, just show you the screw stayed with it. There is this little cam. We'll discuss how that goes back on, but it is just a traditional AK cam, and there's a screw as well for it and the little brass tube with it. Again, when we're doing reassembly part, we'll cover that. Next thing, I'm just going to push the dust cover button forward, and it lifts up and out, and then it allows me to slide the charging handle assembly all the way back and off. So now I'm in a position where I can undo this set screw and I can lift all of this assembly out. So let's have a look at this set screw. It's not going to be that size. Is it an 8? That's an 8. It is a Torx 8. So I could use an hex head or Allen key. I don't want to because the Torx just grip better. I have fully removed the tiny little set screw. So there it is, tiny little thing. Now I should be able to slide the outer barrel out, which I can. And then I should be able to lift the gearbox up, and the whole assembly looks to be attached. Now, it is attached. We've got the on-off switch here. We've got the wiring there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the power wiring for the hop tracer, and I'm going to undo this screw, and then the barrel and the gearbox can come out separately. So first thing I'm going to do, I was expecting a bit of a challenge there, but that literally just pulled apart. It will only really go on one way because of the connector type. And then I'm going to use the Phillips head to remove that. Now I'm going to keep that separately to one side, and it releases. I'm just going to have to turn the hop on to lift that forward. I can take that up and out. So there is our hop unit. It's just a standard AK hop unit with obviously the circuitry involved to make it into a tracer unit. So they've got a cutout, they've attached it down, it screws in on both sides. Bit of wiring going round. Now if I put the hop fully on, ooh, that is interesting. Now that is, as XT Airsoft told me, that is a forked tongue hop unit, where hop rubber, where it's split. When I can catch it on the camera, there we go. That's fully on. Now it was hopping 2 5s with very little adjustment, to be honest. So I would have thought you'll get some, quite weighty BBs out of that. So that's the hop unit. And then we've got our gearbox, which I'm going to wiggle about to get up and out. It looks like. So I just got a flat head in here and just gently pried, just because the selector plate set was catching on the inside of the body. And there is our gearbox. I'm just going to slide that back down to safe. So don't worry if these come off. I'll show you how to reassemble those. There is our part of our MOSFET. Wow, that's interesting. There's the wiring that takes the power from the AEG battery to run the hop unit. Other than that, largely, it's just a bog standard AK gearbox. We have got, I want to say a quick change spring, but let's remove those, put those back on shortly, lift that out of the way. Now that is technically a quick change spring system, but I'm not sure how that's supposed to work. Now, if we remove that screw, because it won't, because the tabs of this, oh, that's quite long. The tabs of this come into the side, so we can't just push it in and twist it out. What I can do is I can now, should be able to, and I can slide that out. So I'm just sliding it out. What I'm cautious of is, oh no, it stayed in there. So I'll just get the large Phillips head I've got, and wow, okay, so it was actually secured in that orientation, so I just had to push it in and twist it until it came out in that orientation. So there is our quick change. Again, you can't actually quick change it whilst it's in the body, so partially feels like it's defeating the object, but it is what it is. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this little select cam through here. Now I'm guessing, hoping, it is a Torx 8 again, which is unusual because usually it's a Phillips head. Now I do apologise if I'm particularly clumsy today. I am doing this literally leant over a table, which is not very comfortable. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove these two screws holding the motor onto the bottom of the gearbox. They are not Torx 8. I should have known. But they are Torx 10. Now they appear to be Torx as opposed to Allen key or hex head bolts this time. One. Now at this point it's important to keep screws together because they tend to be slightly different lengths. And come on. There we go. So let's have a look at those. Those two screws are identical for the motor, so they can be generally kept with the motor. Now it is labelled blue for metal series, unusual, but it is one of their newer style motors. I'm just going to gently lift that up out of the way, and this plate now is just going to gently, famous last words, slide off here. Just going to put a flat head in there and just slide it because it's catching on this little bit here. There we go. As soon as I'm past that, just be careful not to obviously nip the wiring because we don't want to damage anything. Put that out of the way. Motor's out of the way. Now we've got 1, 2, 3 screws and this clip here. This clip here, you might be able to just push with enough force it should come off sideways. There it is. Don't forget to put that back on. And then I've got 3 screws here. These typically are slightly different sizes. Right, there's one. Notice that there are bearings on the first gear and metal bushers on the other 2 gears. Now we're not under any compression in here, so I should be able to largely just lift this open. He says, notice that it is also not a CYMA gearbox, it's a DITAC gearbox as well. There we go, pop that open. Allow that to go. Now, we've got a full metal rack piston with a shaped head that is double O-ringed as well. That's quite interesting. We'll pull this up. So we've got our cylinder assembly here. So we've got a blue anodized, I'm guessing aluminium cylinder head, again shaped to accommodate for the shaped piston head. Now I'm going to check it is vented as well, so what I'm going to do is check compression. So as I push it in, I'm going to hold my finger over the end. I shouldn't, yeah, instantly as soon as it gets past the end of this vent, there is pressure there, there's no air leaking in there, so I've got excellent compression in there. Let's try it with the nozzle. Obviously we want good compression because, you know, it helps to get the FPS out of it basically. Now some air is leaking because it's plastic on plastic. It's not an O-ring based nozzle, but that is excellent compression. I'm really struggling to get that air out, so I'm quite happy with that. Now let's gently lift this up. Here is our fairly simple MOSFET system there. I don't even want to know, you know, I don't even know how to suggest or what to suggest it is. It is got a little switch on the back there that the trigger must be catching as you're pulling it to activate it. It looks like one on top as well. Let's have a look. Maybe that's optical. I think it might actually be optical. Might be an optic on top just there, possibly. But it is just a simple MOSFET. There's nothing special there. The gear set seems to be particularly chunky and very well sort of solid. It is not the standard that you would expect to see. There is an attempt at shimming now. It did and does sound really smooth when it's shooting. You know, like some good effort has been made to shim it right and to get it sounding good. Plus the turning over, the camera doesn't always do it justice, and in fact rarely does it justice, and more often than not it makes them sound far more scratchy than they actually are in person. So what I've done is I've just reset the anti-reversal latch, which should be pushing on this gear here, so I can't turn it back, and I've just made sure that I've rotated so the sector gear teeth are down at the bottom here, and this little notch here that pulls on our tappet plate is out of the way so that we can start our reassembly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook this little spring onto this tappet plate here. So this plate here is pulled back, the nozzle comes backwards, a BB comes up, it comes back forward, and then the piston slams forward and pushes the BB out. So we're going to hook that on this little peg at the front here, and we're going to stretch that back. Now that was quite, left it up with the motor, it's quite stiff going onto, there's a hole here, there's a one on the other side, on the underneath there, and it was a little bit stiff on there, and the piston, I'm just making sure that it's sitting nicely on this track there, and now a little spring was hooked on this peg here. Now it does look like there is some sort of monitoring of the tappet plate maybe going off, coming backwards and forwards, and what I'm just checking for to make sure it's sitting right is that if I run my finger along there, where the gap is where the cylinder sits, it should be basically just pretty much flush. There shouldn't be any gaps or anything like that, or nothing more than like, you know, a tiny little bit of a lip. So I'm just going to drop that back down carefully. Now this is where the fun starts, because everything's going to start pinging out. Now fortunately the trigger hasn't jumped out and the anti-reversal latch hasn't yet jumped out. So let's have an attempt at dropping this back in. So I've rolled it on from the front. Now I can see that the anti-reversal latch is not quite in the right place. So I'm just going to use a screwdriver just to pull that about, manipulate the gears around until I can get them and the trigger's not in the right place. There we go. What I do need to do, oh no, let's get the, oh there we go. The quality control sticker ruined me. I did perfect, everything pinged out. So anti-reversal latch. In this is the orientation of it. As we can see here, we've got the little spring sat up and round, it curls round underneath and comes poking out. That pushes against the side of the gearbox, so it pushes that way up against the gear to stop the gearbox unwinding. If you've not sat that right, once you've finished shooting, you will get like a noise. That's the weirdest noise. Oh my God, that's awful. I'm never making that noise again. And that's the sound of the gears winding backwards. So just obviously keep that in mind. So I'm going to drop that on again from the front. The QC sticker, manipulate out the way. There we go. So just have to move the trigger about. So I'm looking for that it's basically flush all the way around, not having to like compress it down or anything like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just bring the motor back round as well. So the motor has got this little sort of flaring off part of the back. That's just going to click in like that. So now what we can do is we can get those 3 screws back in. Now, fortunately for me, these were all the same length. So from there, there and there, they are all the same length. So I'm just going to pull those in. Do a Torx 10. Now, when you're screwing things in, make sure you go backwards a little bit, just till you feel the click. There we go. To make sure that you are in the correct sort of threads for it. Otherwise, there should not be any sort of pressure. You shouldn't have to force the screw in. It should go in relatively easily. If you are having to force it in, then you are damaging threads and something is not sat right. And now I'm getting the insane feeling that I have missed something. One. So that's the motor screws brought back in. 2. Something I always forget is that little clip there. That can go on now. That's in there. I'm going to bring on the wire clip for the top. So we've got a tiny little open notch at the back there. We're just going to start sliding that on. As we approach the wire in, we're just going to hook the wire into there. Again, making sure it doesn't catch it. And then I'm just going to tap it on to get it past that ridge at the back there. There we go. So it's clicked, so it sits more or less flush at the front and it's up to the back there. So I'm happy with that. And that keeps it nicely out of the way of anything that might try and catch it. Next part, we're going to do the selector and drop it back into the body. So we need the connector cam. So we're going to start on this side. We've got a number of teeth here and we've got a number of gaps. Now they will directly correspond, slide that back, with each other. So as you can see there, they should all marry up like that, nicely lined up like that. Flip that over. The other plate will only sit one way over properly and it should give you sort of like a correct shaping for its screw to drop into. Now what I do need to do is switch from a 10 down to the 8. And it's jumped on that side. Now, at this point, for me, what's just happened there is that gear, I let it jump through and it jumped away. So make sure that you are checking and keeping that solidly down as you're screwing in, because otherwise, or at least always check before you move on to the next step, that it's secured down. So that's nice and tight down. It stops up against this little ledge here. I've made sure that the teeth are all married up there and I can see that they are. That's good. So the next part then is I'm going to bring the spring in. We'll do the spring next actually. So I'm going to bring that in. Now we talked about that, wiggle it in. In fact, let's have a look. In mine, this is a linear spring, so there's no, I suppose there's slightly tighter compression there. So the slightly tighter compression should be on your spring guide, which is bearing base as well to help it keep the spring a little bit healthier. It helps the spring sort of, it wants to twist and unwind whilst it's being compressed. So it just allows the spring to do that. I'm just going to push that in and I'm just going to twist it and keep twisting it until, that's not right. There we go. So it should come back to this position now. And then I've got this little rod to push in through there. And it should line up with the screw hole in there. And then sink that back in. And then in my Phillips head. Right, so the spring is now back in. We're all good. Flip it back over. Now for the rest of the selector. So we've got two parts. We've got this little triangle that's got a square notch on the back. That square notch is going to go in this track here, like that. And that is our physical safety. So that keeps us from pulling the trigger when it's unsafe. We've then got this. Now these teeth here all marry up nicely. They're all linked up together. So when I drop it in, I always put it on safe. So it sits like that. I know then that we're in a good position. Just going to slide that up there. So what I've done is just reset the motor wires in that little track up there that's intended for them. We are now, he says, looking round, checking his detritus on the table. We are now ready for the next stage. So for this bit then, I'm going to drop the gearbox straight in the back there, checking that the wires are not going to get caught up on anything. Again, if at any point there is a firmness, you know, you're really having to push something in, it means something's not sat right. Okay, so there's my motor grip wires. Now the gearbox should fairly easily just drop in position so that this section here looks an awful lot like that, okay? And the wires there, okay, that's fine. That's still on safe. We're okay. So next thing I'm going to do is I want to lift it slightly so we can bring the hop back and the barrel. I'm just going to slide that in forward. I'm going to have to lift the gearbox, oops, rotating everything. Compress the hop again. There we go. I can bring that wire up there. And I'm going to drop that in there. Push that back. And then what I can do at this point is I can bring the screw back in that held them together. Now that is sort of partially, oops, under compression. I'm going to lay that back down while I do that. So I've just got my finger on the front, dropping the screw in. Let's try that again. There we go. There we go. So that's now screwed in. It's attached back to the gearbox. We've got the two bits of wire in there, which I'm just going to carefully just push up there. I'm going to connect that back on. Again, it will only go on one way. I'm not going to take the hop off yet, but what I am going to do is I'm going to bring in the pistol grip and I'm going to slide the pistol grip up into position. And it should, he says, there we go, it should sit flush and you should be able to see the threads in the bottom of the motor cage right there, which I can. I think I'm going to go back up again to a 10. Or is it a 15? There, 15. So torque's 15. Tighten that down. Now at this stage I don't want to tighten it too far down because what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my selector next. So we've got this little connector thing here. Now there is a little tiny notch in the top there and that notch matches that little peg there that comes out, so it sits in like that. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my selector over the top of it, which matches up the shape of it, and then the brass tube and the screw sitting over the top. Still unsafe. Screw that down. I'm going to tighten that up. Now I'm going to come back and tighten the pistol grip up. There we go. My selector's nice and firm again. And we can bring in the outer barrel now. So here comes the outer barrel. I'm just going to slide the barrel in, slide it all the way in, and I'm looking for not sort of catching the wires and things in here. Lift those up. So I'm just delicately wiggling those in just to keep those wires out of the way as much as possible. There we go. There we go. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tap that pin back in there. That was easier than I expected. I'm going to take this off camera to finish that. Should be enough. I'm then going to bring in the set screw, the grub screw, which is a Torx 8. So initially, I'm just going to check it is. It is. I'm going to tighten that down. This just helps to retain and secure things. I'm just going to tighten that off. There we go. Next, I can bring in the front sight block, which lines up with this peg hole here. Now, it will line up exactly where it wants to be. The teeth came in from the left-hand side. I'm just going to tap that in, take that off camera to tap in. That pin's now flush and in there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the charging handle assembly. So this is the inside of our charging handle. Here's our button. The spring feeds in through those holes and the rod will go in like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delicately hold it. It's going to be a bit fiddly. I'm going to turn the selector down. I'm going to drop in the charging handle at the back and slide it all the way forward. I'm going to then wiggle the rod about until it sits in the position, and then I just hooked it back in the back of the gearbox there. So we've now got charging handle. I'm going to turn the hop off while I'm here. There we go. That's nice and safe. Out the way. Next thing we do is we're going to bring in, might as well put the dust cover on for now since we're at that point. Dust cover can go on. We can put our little cover back on the screw, which is that. And that, just hook the little tabs on there, just hook them into the two little obvious gaps that you can see. He says as he struggles to get them in. There we go. So hooked that back in, that's covered over. We can now bring in our bottom handguard, and that just clicks in at the front there and goes up. Ooh. We can bring in our gas block and dropping it in at the front, and that drops into there. And then we're just going to drop one screw in, two screws in. Pretty sure they were 15s. Bring in the Torx 15. I'm going to go backwards until I get the click. There we go. And it's pulling the bottom handguard up. Switch to the other side. Backwards till we get the click. Tight. Make sure the other one's tight. Then we can bring in the muzzle. Again, don't forget it's a negative thread, so it goes the opposite way to what you would used to be, or used to. And that is a Torx 8. That's a 7. That's a 10. That must be the 8. It is the 8. It's not an 8. I have lied to myself. Wow. 6, isn't it? Come on, Pheas. 6. There's a 6. Tighten the 6 down. And there we go. Move those out of the way. We have done. We have completed. In fact, you know what? I've forgotten the stock. So if you want to remove the stock, I'm not going to do it because I don't need to. But those 2 screws will come out and this chunk will come off only. And then if you open the stock up, so it goes up and over, if you remove those 2 screws there, this back plate will come off, just exposing a metal bracket in the back. In fact, you know what? We'll do that because I'm sure somebody will say, please will you remove it? So, what's that? 20. Is that a 15? That's the 10, that's why. So I'm going to use a Torx 15 to remove these. Well, that wasn't as tight on as I expected. 1. Nearly. And there is the back plate there that gives you, that is, I think it's bolted on from the inside as well. And that gives you the stock there. Back plate is what it is. So I don't know if other brands do attachable sections for this. I'm trying to screw it on the wrong way then. So that sits back on there and it will centralize using its own little sort of pin there in the middle of the back plate that you saw. Just going to start sinking that in. That's one in. There we go. So I'm going to tighten those back down. Now they are properly tight. Fold it back over. Now we've completed our disassembly and reassembly for repairs and maintenance. I hope you found that useful. Hope you've enjoyed that. Please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. I hope that helps you with your repairs and maintenance, and I will see you next time. Bye.